वेलकम टू प्रिंस शॉर्टेड हाउस। पार्लियामेंट रिपोर्टर के लिए स्किल टेस्ट अभी आपके स्टार्ट हो जाएंगे और हम 140 वर्ड्स एवरी मिनट से आपको प्रैक्टिस पैसेज दे रहे हैं। टोटल वर्ड्स रहेंगे आपके 1680। तो बी रेडी। 140 वर्ड्स a minute स्टार्ट। I have been surprised to read some comments on the speech I delivered at the recent Conference of Education Ministers. I inaugurated the conference. I did not speak on any resolution, nor indeed did I see any resolution. I have not yet seen the precise resolution passed by the conference, though I have heard about it. I laid great stress in my speech on the necessity of a considerable number of our people knowing foreign languages and more especially English. This was in relation to our development programs and our second and subsequent 5-year plans. I pointed out that it would not be possible for us to go ahead with these plans unless there was a high standard of technical and scientific education, and that this standard could not be obtained at this stage without a full knowledge of at least one foreign language. As a matter of fact, scientists in any country today have to acquire knowledge of several languages in order to keep abreast of scientific literature. I did not say a word against Hindi. Indeed, I said something in favor of it. I took it for granted that Hindi was going to function more and more as a language in our education and administration, except in certain parts of India where the regional languages would be principally used. Nor did I say anything about the medium of instruction. About this, I have no doubt that it will have to be either Hindi or other regional languages. My positive stress was on a foreign language being learnt adequately. In the circumstances in Hindi, this foreign language would inevitably be English, though I hope that other languages such as French, German, etc. would also be learnt. English today is by far the most widespread and important world language, and probably two-thirds of the scientific and technical books in the world are published in English. I find that most people have no idea what industrialization implies. We discuss the financial aspect of it and vaguely think of factories and the like growing up, but the most vital part of industrialization is the training of manpower. We want a vast number of scientists, technologists, and engineers of various kinds. We also want to create a background in which these people grow. This problem of trained manpower is our major problem, and that we have to solve. Our whole future progress depends on this process of industrialization and the use of higher techniques. It must be remembered that it takes long to train a first class scientist or technician. To put up a steel plant, it takes some years. It takes twice that time to train a technician who can run that steel plant. It takes 5 times as much time to train a competent atomic scientist as it takes to put up an atomic reactor. We have thus today to organize training for the people required for the second and third 5-year plans. We cannot delay this, or else our planning and industrial progress will be automatically help us. It is obvious that this high class training cannot be given today and for some years to come without knowledge of a foreign language. It is possible and indeed desirable to give elementary scientific and technological training in Hindi or our other regional languages. We can translate some textbooks as we have actually done. We can build up our technical terms in Hindi as we are doing. But we cannot produce the vast and complicated thought that it lies behind the technical and industrial age by translating a few books or having a list of terms. Changes in technology today are so rapid that even books that are being printed get out of date very soon. Every scientist has to keep up to date by reading many scientific and technical periodicals, usually in several languages. For this and other reasons, it seems to me essential for us to continue in a big way adequate teaching of English as a second language. I say English because that is the easiest foreign language for us to learn and is the most important. We should learn other foreign languages also. Personally, I think that even from the cultural point of view, in addition to the point of view of developing and widening the scope of Hindi and our other languages, it is necessary for us to keep in intimate touch with and having adequate knowledge of foreign languages. Only thus can a stream of thought come to us from various parts of the world. This will enrich Hindi and gradually make it a vehicle of this new thought which will go to other countries possible through Hindi. I fear that many of our people have little conception of the world we live in, this world of automation and atomic energy. We are living through a period of revolution and we have to face a struggle for survival for our country and not merely for achieving higher standard. Next para. I am coming here today from Bihar where I performed or helped in the opening ceremony of a very magnificent piece of work of Indian engineers and the Great Dam. This, I am told, is the longest in the world. A day before that, I performed or participated in a completely different function at Nalanda, a great university center of 1500 years ago in Magad, which is now Bihar. At this place where the ruins of the university still exist, my mind went back to the days of the Buddha. I thought of this message, which apart from its religious significance was a message of tolerance, a message against superstition, rituals and dogma. It was a message essentially in the scientific spirit. The Buddha asked to man to believe anything except what could be proved that experience and trial. All he wanted man to do was to seek the truth and not accept anything on the world of another, even though it be of the Buddha himself. That seems to me the essence of his message, besides tolerance and compassion, and it struck me that the message, far from being out of date today, had a peculiar significance in this world of ours. The spirit of dogma, I say with respect, has affected badly the religious quest and made both minds and practices conform too rigidly. Rigid and intolerant ideas, ideas which assert in effect that I am in possession of the truth, the whole truth, every bit of the truth, and nobody outside the pale has it. Narrow men's minds, settling the door against a tolerant and objective approach where men not only took up at the heavens without fear but are also prepared to look down into the pit of hell without fear. It seems to me that people in the Buddha's time were more advanced in tolerance and compassion that we are, although they were not so advanced in technology and science. While I was there, it struck me that quite apart from the religious issues, there might be something worthwhile in the traditional view of life because it is a tolerant view of life. While it may hold one opinion, it respects the opinion of the others and allows that there may be truth in the others' opinions too. It looks at the universe and the mysteries of the universe and tries to find them in a spirit of humanity. That is their approach to their religion. The scientist is supposed to be an objective seeker of the truth. Science has grown because in a large measure the great scientists have sought truth in that way. But I suppose no man today, not even a scientist, can live in a world his own in some kind of ivory tower cut up from what is happening. Therefore, science today has perhaps begun to cross the borders of moral and ethics. If it gets divorced completely from the realm of morality and ethics, then the power of possesses may be used for evil purposes. But above all, if it is ties itself to the gospel of hatred and violence, then undoubtedly it will have taken a wrong direction, which will bring much peril to the world. I plead with the scientists here and elsewhere to remember that the scientific spirit is essentially one of tolerance, one of humanity, one of realization that somebody else may also have a bit of the truth. Scientists should note that they do not have a monopoly of the truth, that nobody has a monopoly, no country, no people, no book. Truth is too vast to be contained in the minds of human beings or in books, however sacred. Let us be little humble. Let us think that the truth may not perhaps be entirely with us. Let us cooperate with others. Let us, even when we do not appreciate what others say, respect their views and their ways of life. Let us go back to an ancient age in India, Ashoka's period 2300 years ago. This man, who was indefinitely more than an emperor, has left memorials all over this great land, memorials which you can see today. Among the messages that he gave, there is one which I think we should all remember, not only in this country but elsewhere. Addressing his own people, he said, "If you rever your faith while you rever your own faith, you shall rever the faith of others. In reversing the faith of others, you will exalt your own faith and will get your own faith honored by others." If you apply that message of tolerance not only to religion but to the other activities of human life, such as politics, economics, and science, you will find that it puts things in a different context. It is a context which is not very much in evidence today, where differences of opinion are not liked, where the tendency is to suppress the view or the way of life that is not approved of, where ultimately science itself becomes vitiated by a narrow outlook. Stop. Thank you.